would you describe the most significant maybe shift that you saw recently in cybersecurity?
Excuse me for the buzzword, but it's most likely going to be AI. It's not science fiction anymore. The increasing divide in the world. 10 years ago, you also had attacks involved the core, but these were only focused on the top largest companies, the big whales. A company cannot really protect, right? Can't have access to your private cell phone number, to your private email. AI empowers attackers to go wider, to go deeper, and to go faster. Just checking the box is not enough.
Niklas, I'm very happy to have you with us today. So, Niklas Hellemann, you are a psychologist, former psychologist, right?
That's true. These are my roots in behavioral science, but I then transformed into some kind of cyber and business profile.
Exactly, because you are also the CEO and founders of SoSafe, which is a company that talk about awareness in cybersecurity.
That's absolutely correct. We are the largest player for human layer security in Europe, serving over 6,000 customers and helping them to build security culture. And to me, that's also coming back to my roots a little bit, and I'm quite happy about it, because when I started psychology, I was always interested in the cybercrime part. How are people being manipulated? But to be very honest, I never dreamt of a job like this where I can really put that into practice and apply it and help people to be more secure in the digital world.
Actually, I'm very interested to hear you talk about cybersecurity, because we're going to talk about something that you know, which is the human mind. Mm-hmm. Is it something that will be our greatest weakness or maybe our great defense? This is the topic of today, right?
Yeah, well, it's the human as being the weakest link is something we found when we started the company roughly 7 or 8 years ago. The cybersecurity industry was looking at people in a very pessimistic way, I would say. They were frustrated. They saw that people are the main target of attacks. But we thought, and specifically I thought, in order to empower people, it's a very bad starting point to tell them you are the greatest weakness.
True.
So, matter of fact, we believe, and we can also show that humans can in fact be the strongest line of defense. I mean, not the only one, but a very, very, very strong driver of reducing risk.
I think it's a very more optimistic way of seeing it, and it's better to work in an environment when you are not putting down people. So I like this kind of view. So I would like to ask you, how would you describe the most significant maybe shift that you saw recently in cybersecurity?
Well, I mean, excuse me for the buzzword, but it's most likely going to be AI.
Okay.
It's something that we have been following for some years. So I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we were already talking about the potential of, back then, large language models nobody talked about, but we looked at GPT-2. Most people don't know that they never had interacted with these previous versions. And GPT-2 was a nice showcase. It wasn't really powerful in really creating human language and things like that. But back then, we already started on our first human firewall conference, actually, our internal conference that we host every year. I talked about what could be possible in the future. So you don't have to have a lot of fantasy to see that if you have a large language model and you have social engineers, that the combination of that is very, very dangerous, actually. And now we see, and this is one of the key trends that we've been covering over the last 2 years, I would say, it's real now. It's not science fiction anymore. It's not a thought play anymore. It's really something that attackers are employing. They are now using LLMs to run spear phishing, to take information they can find about you, but in an automated way, and to translate that into spear phishing. Another thing we are also seeing is that they are broadening their tool set. So they're also sometimes, and this is still on a low level, but it's increasing, they are also tackling other channels. So we have voice models, for example, that now can replicate my voice or just talk to you in a very realistic way. And that enables attackers to essentially run attacks on a very large scale that 5 years ago would have been highly manual. So, you maybe also have received a voice call or some relative of you.
I saw some of them. I didn't. For now, I'm lucky, but I heard of them and they are very convincing.
It's very convincing. There's no technical barrier anymore. But on the defending side, we have like not many tools in our hands to actually prevent that, or to prevent that from a technical standpoint. So we believe, again, humans are now even more important, because if we train our intuition, if we teach people, if we empower people, then they can do something against it. And they can also do something against it if they are, for example, targeted in their private lives. Because that's something a company cannot really protect, right? They can't have access to your private cell phone number, to your private email. So
is it something that they should or not? Because you're right, private life is your private life. It's not company to protect it. But should we have this responsibility as a company?
I mean, maybe that's also an interesting question for the viewers here. I'm very interested in the comments. My viewpoint is, and I think most companies, they don't want to be too intrusive. So if your employer asks you to, I don't know, connect your LinkedIn profile to a company system, or if they ask you if it's okay to monitor your private cell phone number, technically, like from a technological perspective, that would be possible. But I don't see this
being a good thing
in reality, because it's clearly it would be a very intrusive thing.
I like the story that you told us. So a few years ago, you did a conference with the perspective of how AI is going to impact cybersecurity, and now you kind of gave me an overview of how AI is impacting cybersecurity. Is it exactly how you expected it, or are you a little bit surprised of the turn of things?
It's always bad to say we told you so, but matter of fact, like if you also scroll back to my keynote, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, we were pretty much painting that same picture.
Okay.
The interesting part is now, how fast will this progress? So it's not the case as of now that every employee gets targeted by a voice scam, or every employee gets targeted by a spear phishing attack, but I don't see any limit why that shouldn't be increasing, and I believe it will be increasing. And the interesting part is the timeline, and I think we are in the middle of the beginning of social engineering that is really AI powered.
You said, and you talked in some of your conferences, that the fact of AI is tilting the balance toward cyber attackers. How are we doing as a defender? Are we losing the battle?
Well, that would be a very sad thing, or like not a very helpful perspective. I know it can feel sometimes very overwhelming, and if we really take the perspective of our end users that are using our platform, but of everyone literally, sometimes it feels like it's a cat and mouse game, and the attackers are always, like they're increasing their how much they are ahead. I do think, however, that we can do something, and the power here, and this is also the key theme, or has been the key theme of WhoFiCon this year, is the power of community. Because we
Tell us more. WhoFiCon, what is this?
Yeah, okay. So WhoFiCon is Human Firewall Conference. It's our internal nice term for it. It's the largest conference in Europe focusing on the human layer. And we're hosting that every year. It's technically our customer conference, but also security experts, security leaders come there. We host it in Cologne, where also our headquarters is. And this year we almost had 1,000 visitors. So it's a very big event. Meanwhile, it started small, but now it's one of the flagship events. And there we get together, essentially to also broaden our horizon. We talk about security awareness, we talk about training, we talk about the latest trends in security, but we also try to broaden the horizon in a sense that we have a very diverse program. We also get in psychologists, we get in change management experts, crisis experts, also politicians. Our former vice chancellor, Sigmar Gabriel, was there as well, because we also talked about the increasing divide in the world, which is unfortunately something that is a trend. The divide between Europe and the US, for example. And this influences our work, because a fragmented world is also a less secure world. And we can see that from the war in the Ukraine. It led to a huge increase of cyber attacks. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we focused on community, because we believe we need to stick together, because the attackers might be ahead, but if we stick together, we can maybe, close the gap a little bit by warning each other, by talking about the latest attacks, by talking about what might be the defense. That's our way out. The power of community, obviously empowered with AI.
Yeah, because together we are a little bit more stronger. Let's just go back about the balance that are tilting toward cyber hackers by using AI. Concretely, what does this look like in a company?
So you mean if you get hit by an attack?
Yes.
Or so we have a framework, and essentially that's also what we talked about at Huficon, is that AI empowers attackers to go wider, to go deeper, and to go faster. And what do we mean with that? Maybe starting with the go faster. We see that the innovation pace of new tactics, so that can be a new phishing attack, but that can also be, for example, a new landing page that just looks like the real login page of a large software provider, that they can be much faster in generating that. I mean, we all talk about vibe coding.
Yes.
And everybody played around with it. Attackers are not messing around. They are not playing around anymore. They just take it, for example, to copy a login page, and it exactly looks the same, and they can do that at the click of a button. And so attackers are using vibe coding so that they're getting faster in spinning out new stuff. They're going deeper in enriching their attacks with company-specific context. For example, they scrape the internet about public messages or public announcements, and then they can automatize that into a spear phishing campaign. And they go deeper, they go broader, and that is also employing more channels, which technically they already have done 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you also had attacks that, for example, involved a call or involved someone visiting your offices. But these were only focused on the top largest companies, the big whales, how we called them back then. It was called whaling. You only go for the high value targets and you invest a lot of time. Nowadays, you don't have to invest so much time. So these very sophisticated attacks are now going down the pyramid of the economy and are also hitting smaller companies.
And it's touching everyone, so everyone become a target nowadays.
Yeah, in our private lives, this is also happening. And I remember when cybersecurity as a profession or as an industry started, 50 years ago, with the first virus, for a long time, the key targets were private people, like everyone. But the attacks were fairly simple. Then there was the golden age of ransomware. We're still living in the golden age of ransomware, but it started probably like 10 years ago. And suddenly, companies were the value targets, because it's, from an economic perspective, much more efficient to target a company that has more money than a private person. But now, through the decrease of effort through AI that you have, you can now also target private people. And I don't know, probably our viewers most of them have experienced some case where maybe their grandparents got targeted. Hopefully nothing happened, but we also shared this time again at our conference stories of just elderly people that got called.
Yes.
And there was the voice of their grandchildren, and this is something that we now see much more.
Yeah, we also have smishing, for example. I think everyone had the famous or infamous Amazon delivery SMS that wants you to click on the link to go and pay something. So yeah, I had one myself, to be honest. You've talked about the awareness model being obsolete. Can you explain to me how so?
Yeah, it's a very provocative thesis. I mean,
it's harsh.
I think it's more important than ever. But I think, and that's a good thing, that most security leaders, most CISOs, they have realized that just checking the box is not enough. And also historically, if we look at how cybersecurity maturity has been increasing over the last 20 years, maybe, the key driving factor was compliance, and it's still compliance. And I'm not complaining about that. I think it's also a good thing. I mean, nowadays we are all talking about NIS2.
Yes.
Probably
DORA.
And DORA for our viewers. This is top of their minds. But they also, I think, realize that this is a very good impulse to maybe also get budget, because for the longest time, I think also budgets in security were very constrained, because it's a very bad business case from the point of view of, a chief financial officer. But that changed through compliance. So compliance is always the first kickoff of doing something. But most CISOs now also realized it's not enough. We need to become more differentiated, more sophisticated, and also more adaptive. This is also our key solution hypothesis. Start with compliance, but then use security awareness, or however you want to call it, for driving resilience, because you have a very powerful tool in your hand. But if you spend it or waste it to just check the box and do one mandatory training every year or every 2 years, that's not gonna miss.
So
missing the mark.
Start with compliance. Use the budget. After that, in good things. Okay, so I heard one word, adaptive.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little bit more?
This is also reflecting essentially. So we're looking at organizations worldwide through a lens of a maturity model. And very simplified, it's, most companies still are probably in the first stage where they say, we have to do the basics, right? We have to start with security awareness and training, and that means we have to get everyone, to that bronze level, to the same level. And I think that is reflective of the majority of companies and also public sector organizations worldwide. But after that, we also need to do two things. We need to help our employees to get to the next stage, and that means to be more adaptive to their skill level, to their profile. Are they a leader or are they a regular employee? How much access rights do they have? And just also reflect that. We have a very simplified framework where we say we need to get more adaptive to the threats, so be able to translate what we see in the wild, the latest tactics, rather shortly into also simulations or e-learning experiences. We have to be adaptive to the context. So is it a financial industry organization? Are they globally active? What's their brand? How, where do they have offices, etc. All this is context. And then adaptive to people. There we are at the start. I think the target will be a very individualized experience. So imagine you have to do the mandatory training, but it's very limited. But then, for example, any platform just learns with you and adapts to your specific skill level, to your motivation, also to the way you want to consume content. So imagine a mandatory or like any form of training in the future is maybe a podcast, if you want it. And that's our vision. And with that, we reflect the maturity of organizations. So every organization gets a little bit better. And we also mirror the maturity of the attacker side by getting faster in adapting to their new tactics. Because both of us, we don't know what the social engineering attacks in 2 years will look like. The creativity of attackers is very, very high. And the only chance that we have is and that is our vision, to create a network that can be able to warn themselves and to adapt to those threats in a very short amount of time.
Can you give us for our viewers, some concrete way to adapt the criteria to the different people? And how are you leveraging your background in psychology? Because I imagine that it plays into everything that you're creating right now.
And I can tell you, it's a very old concept. So many of our viewers maybe have heard or even passed the GMAT test. I don't know, this is a business, it's a test you need to do in order to get into business schools. And this test has been developed by psychologists, probably like 50 or 60 years ago. And it's based on a theory that's called adaptive testing. So it essentially starts with a task or like an exercise you have to solve, a mathematical one, for example, and it assumes an average difficulty level. And if you pass it, you get the next difficult one. If you don't pass it, you get an easier one. And in the end, you have tested the participants in their ability to solve mathematical problems. And it's a very old concept that we also want to, that we are already implementing on our platform, for example, by something we call awareness assessments, where we just ask people to answer some questions, and then they don't have to do the mandatory training or parts of the mandatory training because they have already proven that they have the skills. And why would we push people through the same training, the same videos all over again, when they already have understood what a strong password is?
All right. I have another question. You said that no organization can face AI alone, and you also talked about collectiveness. Mm-hmm. So what does it look like exactly? Yeah, well,
this is also directly addressing the cat and mouse problem. So most attacks are so powerful because they are based on an information asymmetry. So if you receive a call that is allegedly from your bank, the attacker knows, they are not from your bank. But technically there would be an information point. For example, your bank would know that you are currently not getting called by one of their employees.
Okay.
So there are neobanks, for example, I'm not going to mention any specific names, that, for example, within their app have a functionality. You can open the app and say, like, currently we are not calling you.
Oh.
So you're leveling the information asymmetry. And the same thing applies to a community of companies. So if one company, for example, in the manufacturing sector, becomes targeted with a new social engineering tactic, and if you can feed that into the network, you can warn all others. And that's also something that we're currently working on or launching, have been launching on our platform, a functionality called Threat Inbox, where companies can share more information about real phishing attacks, and then through AI, we call it Recreate Attacks, can build attack templates for themselves, but they can also share them with others. So imagine there's a company that gets targeted, and immediately this gets translated into a simulated attack that we can then roll out to all the other customers.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's cool, yeah, because we can then shorten the time to awareness, how we call it.
I really like what you said about the app. Is this really a bank doing that right now?
Yeah, well, that example, yeah, I think it's one bank that I know of. I think all banks should actually adopt that.
They need to call all the other banks.
Yeah.
So my next question is, what does powerful cybersecurity community look like in practice? What are the mechanisms to understand exactly what you mean by collectiveness?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, it's sharing information. So I talked about how we do that on our platform. This is one example. But then there are also other questions or like other benefits that we can have with sharing more, or like through sharing more information. So for example, and coming again to that maturity model, if you start with security awareness or security culture building, usually this involves rolling out a solution and having some form of training that everybody needs to go through. You can do a lot of things right there, but you can also, step into some problems. We have 6,000 customers, so many of them in various industries went through the same thing. So at some point we said, this actually started at Hufikon, we want to really facilitate the sharing of knowledge. And currently that's our human firewall leader community, I think roughly 200 members. So far these are all CISOs or security leaders, and they exchange, in this case it's a forum that we host, but we kind of like share some information there. But then we are also trying to stimulate conversations and to share knowledge, for example, about a rollout. One key factor, for example, if you roll out a security awareness program is involve the top management. That's a very old learning from change management. If you have the top management committed and being part of the communication, it will be much, much higher in adoption. And it's just one example that technically makes sense, but it helps if you learn from someone who has gone through the same stage already.
One of the questions, are they keen to share information? Because one of the things that we see in cybersecurity is everyone is very secretive, no one wants to talk. Either it's shame, either they are afraid of maybe opening a new breach, I don't know, but communicating, sharing past hackers and cyber attacks is very difficult. So are you seeing them going beyond that?
So, I mean, first of all, you need to really make sure that this is a trusted environment. I mean, we're also protecting that we are a security company. And then I learned that most companies and most CISOs are very eager to share, at least between their peers. I know that, for example, in highly competitive industries like automotive, for example, there are running roundtables of the largest automotive manufacturers that are very transparently sharing information. And this is a great thing, right? Because these are fierce competitors. They would never share anything in their core markets. But in security, everybody in that community just gets stronger by sharing information.
So my last question is, how is SoSafe contributing to building this kind of shared resilience?
Well, I mean, through these two levers. So our product, this is something where we are heavily investing to really empower our customers to share more attack signals through the platform. And the examples that I gave, they are the most tangible elements that we currently have to make it just very easy to translate a real-world attack, a real signal, into a meaningful experience on the platform. A learning module, a learning conversation, an attack simulation. And then next to that, we are also trying to to stimulate that exchange of information around those softer factors like communication and change management. And this is something where we will also be investing. Our customer success department, these are our project managers that serve our customers, they're already very, very skilled in helping them to get through those maturity stages. But also there we can employ AI, for example, by feeding an LLM that then will actually help our customers to answer all these questions around the hard platform, around those softer factors. And this is something that we are very excited and will be investing in.
Well, thank you very much, Niklas, for your answer. And I really like the way that you put human in the center of cybersecurity. I think we need more of that. So for all the viewers that are seeing us, if you need to know more about SoSafe, you have obviously the website of SoSafe, and you can find Niklas Hellemann on LinkedIn if you have more questions. Thank you very much, Niklas.
Thank you so much, Yasmin.